All right, Soumya. I think we'll probably call this a quorum and get ready whenever you're ready. So, just for everybody's frame of reference, we've had one MuleSoft lunch learning session so far. Wayne led us through a session, MuleSoft for Boomi developers, just touched on the basic architecture of MuleSoft, he highlighted some of the main differences that you'll see if you're coming from a Boomi background into MuleSoft from a development side. And today, Soumya is going to walk us through performance in MuleSoft. So I'll hand it over to you, Soumya. Thanks for giving us your time today, and yeah, look forward to hearing about it.
No problem. So, yeah, as Andrew said, like Wayne is going to cover the Mule architecture and Mule, probably the best practices. And next week, Chirantan is going to speak about the data weave. So one of the things that I am going to share with you guys today is, a testing, what are the testing frameworks that are typically available with MuleSoft. So we are going to cover the performance and load testing and the unit or the integration testing. Very quickly, how can I share? Yeah, share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so as I said, like we are going to cover two things. So one is the performance or load testing. And just using Apache JMeter, it has nothing to do with Mule, by the way. So in my last engagement with the customer, and couple of interaction I had with the Mule projects. So two things I found, like every customer is asking, especially with the Mule projects, we kind of create, like there are batch integration scenarios, but Mule is more renowned for creating APIs. So APIs, like, APIs are typically exposed to the outside world, consumed by mobile applications, and also they have, very hard SLA on those APIs, like has to be performant, scalable, very quick to respond, something like that. So almost all of the customers, they asked for a performance, kind of metrics before putting that API into production. And the other thing is the using the MUnit. So using MUnit, we can cater the unit testing scenarios and as well as integration testing scenarios. And I think MUnit is a must. So whoever has worked on Mule projects, I think we have a couple of people here in the call, so they can add anything to it. But my experience with Mule implementation is MUnit is must, and customer will always ask you to have MUnit, especially like, when MUnit has the capability to be integrated with any CI tool like Jenkins. So whenever you are migrating your Mule projects, deploying to the higher environments, you can configure Jenkins or any other CI tool to run those unit testing and integration testing to provide a kind of test harness and your fulfill your testing requirements as far as CI/CD is concerned. So MUnit will really help you to automate your testing scenarios, and that's why, like, I have not seen any customer who is not asking for MUnit. Like, they are okay without MUnit. So, and MUnit is little bit different. So that itself requires some kind of development. So first, I'm going to talk about this performance or load testing using Apache JMeter. So this is something we have used and I have learned how to use in my last engagement. And frankly speaking, this has nothing to do with Mule. So you can run this one for any endpoint which is, kind of accessible from where you are running the JMeter uh, application. So that makes sense. Anybody has any question?
That makes sense to me.
So here is the document I have prepared, like how we can use JMeter, and I will put this document into SharePoint. So this document talks about step by step, how you can install JMeter and how you can use JMeter to perform any kind of load testing, and then how you can provide or create a kind of dashboard which will depict, like, what is the maximum throughput, what is the latency, how many failures, how many success, and all these things. So one of the cool thing about JMeter is it's open source, so you can use it anywhere, and it's very flexible and powerful. It has a lot of features, although I don't know all the features, but yeah, but you can play with this tool. This tool is really simple and great, and they have a lot of documentation available on internet. So let me show you quickly. Yeah. This will start the JMeter application, but you can go to this URL and download JMeter. Just unzip into any of your folder, and you can double click on jmeter.bat if you are, or going to command prompt and run jmeter.bat to yeah, to run this tool. And it will create .jmx files, and you can, if you have anything already, then you can open it. Like I created something, yeah, my test plan. Let's open it, let's see it. So first, typically you will create a test plan. You name whatever you want to name it, and then you can add more details here. And then, a thread group. So in the thread group, typically you will define like how many runs you want to do on that API. Like here I'm specifying number of threads, like, so the number of concurrent users, so that is 5, and then how many times each user is going to run. So I have specified as 4. So if I run this one, so JMeter will eventually hit the endpoint, whatever I have configured, 20 times. And, so, and delay for each invocation is 1 second. So that's how you do your load testing configuration here. And in the thread group, typically you can add a lot of controllers. So they do have a lot of controllers available. If you want to do a loop, then you can use a white controller. Then you have a loop controller as well. I don't know all of this. So, but typically you can use a simple controller. So that basically it's a simple controller. So using that controller, whatever you have defined as the sampler, like HTTP request or anything, it will execute. And here, so inside that thread group, add the controller, and then inside the controller you typically add the type of endpoint you want to invoke. So they do support HTTP, they do support FTP, JDBC, JMS, LDAP, SMTP, TCP. So these are the protocols currently supported, but for API we are mostly looking for HTTP or HTTPS. And then in the HTTP request, you define like what is the protocol you are going to use, what is the IP you are going to invoke, then the port number, the HTTP method, and then the path. So after defining this, so one of the thing is here I have defined as raw text, but you can define these as variables so that when you run these things in the command line, you can, using command line, you can change things. So again, this is very well integrated with CI tools like Jenkins. So you can go in Jenkins and you can run JMeter commands and specify those variables so that, let's say, you have a performance environment where customer wants to have the performance done for a specific API and they have a specific set of requirements. If you make variable for all these things, then in the Jenkins script, you can configure those variables, pass on those variables, and you will have that the load testing configuration and load testing run on a specific requirement. And then you add a result tree. So if I run this HTTP request, then here I can see the results of my run, and then the HTTP header manager if you want to pass any headers to your HTTP request. So if I go in here and if I try to run it, let's run it, complete, then go to view results. So these are the 20 invocations, and if I click on this, then I can see like what is the request that was sent, what is the response data that I have received, so like that. And every request is same, so all we are bothered about is whether we have the successful request or not. And then what we can do is, so once we confirm that this is kind of running, let me open another one where I have parameterized everything. Yeah, so if you see here, I have parameterized. So you have to follow this specific pattern in case you want to parameterize anything and pass on in the command line as a variable. So here I'm defining this as a user and this as a loop. And then in the HTTP request also I have parameterized everything, the protocol, host, port. So this will give you better control if you want to run this thing in any environment with any kind of endpoint. And then, so this document up to this point talks about like whatever I have just shown you. And then if you go onto the command prompt and execute the JMeter command, then and specify like a file. So in this file, if you open this file, it will show you like all the run results inside that file. I don't know if I have the file, but let's see. Yeah, I have something. Yeah, so this will typically collect all the metadata regarding your run, the response code, response message, and all these things. Then what are the bytes sent, all these things. What is the latency, connection time, the URL that you are connecting, mock target APG I have tested with. And then, but that CSV file is not readable and you cannot share that. So again, there is another command line command. So if you run this command, then this using that CSV file, it will create a nice report for you, and you can drill down into the report and like get all the performance metrics. So this will be something like, if I have it. Yeah, so this will, you will have a report like this where you can see like how many requests you made, what is the percentage of error, what is the average response time, what is the minimum response time, and what is the maximum response time. So in 90% cases, what was the response time you have received, 95%, 99%, and all those things. If you drill down further, I believe this is the dashboard. Yeah, see, yeah, throughput. So it will show you like this was the throughput that you have attended, you have obtained, and so a lot of different matrices. Codes per second, transaction per second, response time versus request, and then latency versus request. Yeah, so as I said, like it comes with a lot of charts and graphs and how your response time percentile worked when you started and when you ended. So in 90% cases, it ended up like this. In 10% cases, you got the response within this millisecond. Yep. So all different kind of matrices and dashboards that you can get out of the box. And if you want to configure them, if you want to change them, then you can like save this, do a lot of things with it. So the good thing about it is it's really simple to use and open source. So if anybody has any requirements of performing any performance testing or load testing on their APIs, they can use it if the client is okay. So for one of the client, we have to share this thing before they approve any deployment to production. So they have a very hard SLA on the minimum, maximum, and average time in milliseconds. So without this, we couldn't get any approval for production deployment. So that's where this tool came into the picture, and we started working on it. I liked it, so I thought of sharing this. Any question?
None on my end.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll upload this document into SharePoint. So anyone wants to use it, you can go through the document and use it. If anybody has any question, you can reach out to me. Okay, so that's it. And the next thing is, which is a Mule thing. So the unit and integration testing using MUnit. So let me pull up a Mule PPT and go through. to see where it is. Yep. Forget about this while testing. Yeah, so as I was saying, that unit testing, integration testing, so functional testing typically is done by the the tester team, where probably you would require like different scenarios and all. So MUnit, we use it for unit testing and integration testing. You can also use JUnit, but again, like JUnit, you have to set up an all. MUnit comes by default with Mule. You have to add this dependency in your form.xml for getting all those Mule things. So one of the thing I noticed, and again, I haven't used MUnit as such in Mule 4, and so yesterday I was going through and I found there's a lot of change between Mule 3 MUnit and Mule 4 MUnit. They have changed everything drastically. Yeah, but these are the dependencies and the Maven plugin, these are still required. Yeah, so this is saying that how it's kind of integrated with Anypoint Studio. Yeah, so one of the things that we can do as part of MUnit is typically during development, we don't have all the end systems available and working. So MUnit comes really handy in those scenarios where you have to go through your development, but end system is also going through changes and it's not ready. So in that scenario, you can really mock the end system, and so mock the end system to pass on the same kind of response, or you can change it also, and you can continue with your development. But in typically the integration scenario, you would want that in probably in dev or test, whatever is the environment, you deploy and run your integration testing. So if the integration testing is successful, you get 100% success rate, then you move ahead and continue on your CI/CD process. While testing, you can add multiple assertions. So assertion is something like you assert that uh, out of the testing, the payload will not be null. So something like that. And again, this is Mule 3. In Mule 4, there is nothing like assert not null, assert not equal. So they have combined all the asserts and put it in one assert scope. You can spy into the message processors and execute them and introspect what is the payload, how it is handling, and all these things. This is the structure of MUnit. So uh, you can have multiple tests, and multiple tests can be incorporated in a MUnit suite. So either you can run a suite or you can run a specific test. It's up to you. And then it has the pre run, post run, and all these things. So if you need any configuration to be done before running your test, that you can specify in your pre-run. If you want any cleanup or something like that, you can specify those steps in your post run. That's how it works. So this is the basic structure of a unit. Again, this is Mule 3. Probably something has changed in Mule 4. We'll see the studio in Mule 4. Okay. So yeah, so very simple project I have created just to test the unit. Uh, Unfortunately, I don't have the Maven setup done, so I was not able to run the unit, but still you can see how we can create a unit. So let's say I want to create a unit for this project. Then I go in here, new, here you can choose unit test. You can name anything. And if you have multiple flows in your Mule XML file, then you can either choose a file or you can add that later on also. So if I select here, then all the flows will be included. If I don't, then nothing will be included. And if I create finish, then it will create a test similar like this. So as I was saying, a lot of things changed in MUnit from Mule 3 and 4. So now everything comes in two module. One is MUnit, where you can set an event, set null payload, and I was saying that after suit, after test, before suit, before test. So if you have anything specific you have to do, any configuration, let's say you want to load a database before you run the test, so you can specify those steps in your before test suit or the before test, and similar thing for after suit and after test. So set event is typically we want to use to trigger a flow. So what I'm doing here is basically, so this is the MUnit suit, and if I have, and in this suit I have one test, and that this is this one. I can specify multiple tests here. Then the suit will contain two tests, and I can choose to run the suit, or I can choose to run the specific test like this, run MUnit test. You can debug also MUnit execution, and if I click on outside, I can choose to run the MUnit suit here. So suit will execute all the tests, and this will execute a specific test. If I run a suit also, then later on I can come into here and I can choose ignore test. So in that case, MUnit suit execution will ignore that specific test. And the other one is really important is MUnit tools. And here, as I was saying, in Mule 3 there were a lot of asserts, assert not null, assert equal, and all these things. Now they have only one assert, which is assert that. So here you have to specify whatever you want to specify, like not null, or you are looking for a specific value like for this one. What I am saying here is look for the payload, and the payload should not be null. If it is null, then throw that as an error and put a message like the payload is null. So that is basically what I am trying to do with this assert. It's a very simple assert, but you can do a lot of things. So it comes with different functions, and I believe those you have to go through Mule documentation to identify what exactly you want to do here. And if the suit is going to execute, if the test is going to execute, what it is going to do here is first it will execute the set event. Yeah, so in the set event, what I'm doing here is I'm setting a flow variable. So if I go to the reference flow, so this is my reference flow. So I'm not doing much here. I'm just logging here a flow variable, and then in the choice, I'm just have one if else kind of block. So here I'm checking whether the flow variable is not null. Then go into this reference flow. It's just doing a set payload that this is the main flow, and the other one is going into here where it is specifying that this is the default flow. So what munit will do, so let me run this one and show you. My 16 gigabyte laptop gets hanged with Anypoint Studio.
Long live Boomi.
Man, this is because that's in browser.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, seriously, but this Anypoint Studio 7 and 7 dot some X version is really a resource hungry thing.
Um, so um, till the time Soumya's laptop comes back, oh, it came back. Um, One thing I would probably add is that MuleSoft is also going all cloud now. So there'll be very soon, you can do it right away, but there'll be soon a time when you'll also not use Anypoint Studio, but do everything on the Cloud Hub. Cloud Hub gives you an option of writing all these codes straight away in Cloud Hub as well. We are
Will it
so much
still look
used to
like this
Anypoint Studio.
IDE?
Uh, yeah,
So
so
yeah,
Anupam
what I,
is,
we are
yeah,
so
so
much used to this Eclipse-based IDE. We love it, but MuleSoft has that option of going and writing an entire code in cloud or in a browser, just like Boomi.
Gotcha.
yeah, so with the Mule Crowd 2 release, they introduced something called Flow Designer. So you can go to Flow Designer, you're talking about the Flow Designer, right, Anupam?
Right. I mean, if you go to the Anypoint Cloud Hub, you have all these options over there. It's just that we don't use it. We don't like it, but that option is there. And it's still not matured enough. Probably needs some more time. But yes, the options is coming up.
Yeah,
Not the Flow Designer, but you'll probably find it in the Design Center itself.
that is the Flow
But
Designer.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. So as I was running this project, so it's kind of running here. Very simple. So if I run this one without the query parameter, every time it says default flow. Now if I add a query parameter of name flow1, it's going to give me main flow. So what it's doing essentially here is, this is the HTTP listener. It comes in here. It says a set. It does set the variable from the query parameter flow1, which is flow1, and then it calls this flow. I don't know which flow is that. Yeah, it calls this flow, and then here we have the choice. So if the flow1, the variable that we set in the previous flow is not null, then it will go in here and print this is main flow. So right now this is not null. That's why it's printing main flow. If I remove the flow variable, then it will not go into that flow, and this is the default flow. And when I was trying to do this thing in munit, so what now, coming back to munit, so what I did is basically, first thing I did is, let me what's this one, set event. In the set event, I'm setting the variable as flow_var1 because in my main flow I have this one as flow_var1, and then invoking this flow. So when munit will run, it will set that variable, come in here, and in the choice, it will get into the choice, and it will have this if condition successfully executed. It will go into the flow reference, and then in the flow references, this is the main flow. Yeah, so it should print this is the main flow, but unfortunately I don't have the Maven set up, so that's why I was not able to run this same unit. But again, like on a nutshell, this is how you do it. So, and typically after execution of the flow, you would have an assert, and in the assert, you would specify your condition, the condition where you will define that the execution is success or the execution is failure, like this. So the execution is success or execution is failure, and the mock when it's used to mock the endpoint. So let's say in this main flow here I was calling a HTTP endpoint. So in that case, and typically in development, if that endpoint is not available, so then I would use this mock when to mock that specific endpoint. And that's it. Verify call is just, I believe, if I remember correctly, then verify call is just to verify whether invocation of an endpoint was successful or not. And spy you would typically use if you have to examine any kind of message processor. So message processor is like every action is a message processor here. So logger is a message processor, choice is a message processor, flow reference is a message processor. And if you have to spy in, like dig into the message processor, what it is receiving, and then what it is processing and what it is outputting, then you would use spy. So that's what munit is. And typically when you create munit, it always going to reside under source test munit as a different XML file. And for unit testing, you will have an XML. For integration testing, you will have an XML. So unit testing, you will run whenever you are deploying the app. Again, typically that can change based on the situation. But again, unit testing, you would typically run when you are deploying your app into your dev server. And integration testing is on the higher environment, probably SIT, UAT, the testing environments. So you define that as a separate XML file, and in your Jenkins, you can configure which XML to run in which environment, and if you want to pass any kind of parameters, yeah. And everything is packaged here in the pom.xml. So in Mule 4, all the projects are Maven projects. In Mule 3, you had to make a Mule project, Maven project, but in Mule 4, whenever you create a project, it's by default a Maven project. So here you define all your dependencies and repository and any kind of plugin you need. So munit comes as a plugin, and munit should have a dependency here like this. This is a plugin, and there was a dependency. So when you add this into POM, it's and when Maven will package your application, it will automatically download all those dependencies from the Maven repo and build the project. So you don't have to deal with like compiling and downloading and packaging things. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. So what I will do on this PPT, I will add some references, probably some documentation, some YouTube videos, and upload this PPT along with this document into SharePoint. Anybody wants to refer in future, I means MUnit is like 100% you have to use MUnit if you are on a Mule project. So that's kind of mandatory. Yeah. And since I'm an API designer, I think I'm an API designer. Where's that? API designer, yep. Like, go out. Yeah. Oh, no, not this one. Yep. No, I don't have permission. Excellent. So what Anupam was saying here, so if you go to Design Center and you create a new Mule application, so that will open up the Flow Designer. So in Flow Designer, you can, on a browser-based environment, you can write your Mule applications instead of getting into Anypoint Studio and doing all these things. So this is useful in the scenario where you want to build a quick integration and deploy in an environment. But again, typically for CI/CD and full SDLC cycle, you would typically want to go to Design Center, define your YAML or open API specification, export that to Exchange, publish it to Exchange, and use that artifacts to build your projects in Studio. And then from using Studio, you typically deploy to your target environments. The Flow Designer is for a quick stuff. If you want to do a POC, if business really wants an integration, just one-off quick thing, deploy it to and run it, then you would use Flow Designer. I think that's it. I'm done.
Nice.
Thanks, Shoma.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Concerns? Alrighty. Well, we will have our next session on data weave and Shrantan, at least on the topic of MuleSoft, and Shrantan will lead us through that. Keep yourself posted in your inboxes. We will be rescheduling that. Shrantan's coming back to us here shortly. So thanks again, Soumya. Appreciate your time, your expertise. And we have this recorded, so you should see it in the SharePoint if you're wanting to see any more or just review this. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Very much. Yep. Thanks, Shoma. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Does you have a question?